2017. Burj Al Arab, ballroom lights. Champagne, a private wedding with a security perimeter that feels like a state visit. Dubai sells distance. Distance from police files, distance from the ports. Because while that room is air-conditioned and polished, Antwerp is cold metal. Rotterdam is floodlights and container stacks, two logistical hubs that never sleep. And in those yards, the wealth you see in Dubai turns into something else. Bolt cutters, encrypted phones, and men willing to cut open a container door for a package that isn't theirs. That's the split. Dubai is the showroom. Antwerp and Rotterdam are the loading dock, and the violence happens where the cargo lands. Within seconds, the myth breaks. This wasn't one gang. It wasn't a single mastermind. Investigators say it functioned like an alliance.
And Dubai police arrested 6 suspects.
This is another story of drug importing in unusual objects.
130 kg of pure heroin with a street value of 65 million dirhams through Jebel Ali port has been foiled by Dubai Police's General Anti-Narcotics Department.
A business arrangement between separate trafficking groups that decided cooperation was more profitable than war. Europol called it a super cartel. Not a logo, not a brand. A structure, pooling resources, sharing routes, sharing people, sharing protection. And law enforcement in Belgium said the scale was extreme. Investigators believed this alliance controlled around 1/3 of Europe's cocaine trade. 1/3 doesn't mean they touched every kilo. It means enough control to influence supply, pricing, and distribution, and enough redundancy to absorb seizures like a cost of doing business. To understand how that happens, you don't start with street dealers. You start with management. Daniel Kinahan is a name that doesn't sit in one country. Irish, tied by authorities, and major reporting to the Kinahan organized crime group. He wasn't presented as a man who loads crates or guards a stash house. He was a facilitator, someone linked to a network that could negotiate, coordinate, and keep operations stable when other people got emotional. In April 2022, the U.S. Treasury sanctioned Kinahan and the organization. The U.S. also publicly announced rewards for information, leading to arrests of top figures connected to the Kinahan group. When that happens, it's not aimed at a low-level player, it's aimed at infrastructure. But back in 2017, the public image was different. A luxury wedding at the Burj Al Arab. A venue designed to project legitimacy. A place where the guest list matters because it shows who can share a room without fear. A wedding isn't proof of a conspiracy. It's not a charge sheet. But for investigators, it's a signal. Because in a world where trafficking networks rarely merge, moments of social overlap can explain how alliances form. Where introductions happen, where deals become easier, where rivals become partners. And the Super Cartel story depends on partnership. The next name is Ridouan Taghi, Moroccan Dutch, a figure Dutch authorities pursued for years. He was arrested in Dubai in December 2019 and transferred to the Netherlands. In February 2024, a Dutch court sentenced him to life imprisonment in the Marengo trial.
Dubai police arrested the most dangerous criminal and the most wanted criminal in Netherlands and Europe. His name was Ridouan Taghi. He's the most wanted criminal in Netherlands for a string of assassinations and murders and drug trafficking to Europe.
Taghi's case is often described with one word: violence. The Marengo proceedings became associated with a series of killings connected to the legal process, including lawyer Dirk Wiersum and journalist Peter R. de Vries. Those are facts that sit like concrete in the record. They're not rumor, they're part of what made the case a national trauma in the Netherlands. But in the Super Cartel framework, Taghi is not just a symbol of fear. He represents logistics and enforcement, how shipments move reliably through Europe, and how people inside the chain are kept in line. Because cocaine at this scale isn't smuggled into a country, it's inserted into commerce. It rides in legal trade routes, in containers that look like every other container. It moves through ports, where volume is protection. There are too many boxes, too many subcontractors, too many hands. The method is simple on paper and brutal in practice. Product is sourced from Latin America through long-term suppliers. It's shipped in containers that carry legitimate goods. Then it's extracted. Extraction is a job. a specialized task force inside the criminal supply chain. Sometimes it happens before customs checks. Sometimes it happens after release. It can involve corrupted insiders, compromised trucking firms, or teams that know exactly which box to cut and how fast to disappear. Then distribution takes over. Warehouses, vehicles, routes that avoid predictable checkpoints, secondary storage locations, and finally, wholesale delivery into domestic markets. This is where Fortune 500 comparisons come from. Not because anyone is wearing a tie, but because the operation depends on division of labor. If one unit fails, the whole company can't collapse. It has to keep moving. And to keep moving, communication has to be secure and fast. Investigations across Europe increasingly relied on data from encrypted phone platforms. The point wasn't that these phones made criminals invisible. It's that they made them efficient. Orders, schedules, payments, complaints, threats, everything documented because the users believed nobody could read it. Then law enforcement did. When investigators break encrypted communications, they don't just get admissions, they get structure. Who approves what? Who pays whom? Which shipments matter? Which ports are prioritized? Which people are expendable? That's how separate groups can be seen acting like one. The third name is Raffaele Imperiale, Italian, a figure linked by authorities and reporting to the Camorra world. In August 2021, Dubai police announced his arrest. He was extradited to Italy in March 2022, according to reporting. Imperiale's public narrative includes something that looks almost absurd next to cocaine and murder. Art, high-end collecting, the kind of asset class that can be legitimate, but also convenient. Portable wealth, a store of value that can move across borders with the right paperwork, or disappear into private storage with no audience. That matters because cocaine is only half the business. The other half is money. You can ship tons of product, but if you can't clean the proceeds, you're not a cartel, you're a target. Money has to be recycled through systems that don't ask too many questions. Property, companies, trade invoices, luxury goods, art, anything that turns cash into a balance sheet. Imperiale is useful to this story because he represents the interface between underworld profit and respectable appearance, not because art is inherently criminal, because laundering demands credibility, and credibility is purchased. The fourth name is Edin Gačanin, often called Tito in media, a Bosnian-born figure associated in investigations and reporting with large-scale trafficking. He was arrested in Dubai in November 2022 as part of Operation Desert Light, according to investigative reporting. In the Super Cartel story, Gačanin is often framed as the muscle, the connector, the figure associated with Balkan trafficking networks that have a reputation for moving product and enforcing discipline. Whether that label fits perfectly depends on the source. What's verifiable is that law enforcement treated him as a high-value target in a multinational case. Now step back. Different countries, different criminal cultures, different reputations. So why cooperate? Because ports are not romantic. They're math. Antwerp and Rotterdam handle massive container traffic. High volume means low visibility per unit. Customs can't open everything. Inspections are selective. Criminal groups exploit that reality. They don't need to beat the system. They just need to hide inside it. But hiding inside a port is expensive. You need contacts. You need workers with access. You need extraction teams. You need transport. You need a system to resolve disputes fast. If you run your own pipeline, you take all the risk. If you share a pipeline, you reduce costs and increase throughput. A cartel alliance doesn't have to be friendly. It just has to be mutually profitable. That's what Super Cartel means in practice. Not that everyone likes each other, that everyone understands the margin. Dubai fits into that picture because it offers two advantages: concentration and insulation. It's a place where people can live well, meet discreetly, and operate at distance from European street pressure. Whether that safety is absolute is another question, but it was perceived as safer by many fugitives and high-level figures, at least for a time. And then came the coordinated hit. Operation Desert Light is the name given to a series of coordinated raids and arrests in November 2022. Belgian federal police described coordinated action between 8 and 19 November across several countries. including operations connected to the UAE, with coordination involving Europol and support from the USDEA. Authorities reported 49 arrests in total across the participating countries. They also described more than 30 tons of drugs seized over the course of the investigations connected to that network. Those numbers matter because they point to scale. Not a single shipment, not a single crew, a supply chain. The significance wasn't just arrests, it was synchronization. When you move against a multinational network one country at a time, the rest of the network adapts. It shifts routes, changes phones, replaces operators. When you hit multiple nodes at once, you disrupt decision-making, you freeze cash flow, you remove trust. Dubai's role changes at that point. It stops being a quiet office when local authorities act on requests and conduct arrests. Even then, the story doesn't end with a clean line, because a super cartel isn't a single organization you can dissolve with one raid. It's a market behavior, groups cooperating under pressure to maximize profit. If one alliance fractures, another can form. And there's a contradiction that doesn't go away. Taghi was already arrested in 2019. Imperiale was arrested in 2021. Desert Light peaks in 2022. Kinahan is sanctioned in 2022. The timeline tells you this wasn't one switch flipped. It was a sequence of pressure points across years. Arrests, extraditions, decrypted messages, and coordinated raids all stacking on top of each other. So if you're looking for a single fall, you won't find it. What you find is attrition, and even attrition has limits, because Europe still runs on those ports. Antwerp and Rotterdam cannot shut down. Trade has to keep moving. The same container volume that powers legal economies also creates cover for illegal cargo. That's the permanent vulnerability. So the ending isn't a victory speech, it's a balance sheet. Dubai wasn't the product, it was the office. The ports weren't the backdrop, they were the engine. And the uncomfortable inversion is this: the story isn't about reckless criminals making stupid mistakes. The story is about criminal management becoming disciplined enough to mirror legitimate business. When law enforcement broke encrypted phone networks and coordinated raids across borders, it proved something important. Not that the underworld is chaotic, it proved it can be organized. And organization scales. So the real question isn't whether this specific alliance was damaged, it was. The record shows arrests, seizures, and prosecutions that hit the network's top end. The real question is what replaces it. Because as long as the global economy runs on containers, there will be space inside that system for people who treat cocaine like inventory, corruption like payroll, and violence like human resources. And somewhere, maybe not in the Burj Al Arab, maybe not in Dubai at all, the next meeting is already happening.